The music stopped. That was the first thing Elara noticed. It wasn't a gradual fade. It was an abrupt, terrified halt, as if the violinists had suddenly forgotten how to play. 300 guests at the Kensington Manor, the elite, the wealthy, the arrogant, turned their heads toward the entrance in perfect unison. Elara stood there, the cheap dress she had worn earlier replaced by silk that cost more than her sister's entire honeymoon. But no one was looking at her. Every eye was locked on the man whose arm she held. The groom pressed and dropped his champagne glass. It shattered against the marble, but the sound was swallowed by the sudden vacuum of fear that gripped the room. Elara smiled. Her twin sister had wanted a memorable wedding. She was about to get one. Elara adjusted her name tag, the plastic digging into her blouse. Elara Server was printed in bold, uninspiring font. The diner smelled of stale coffee and grease, a stark contrast to the perfume that had just wafted through the door. Seraphina had arrived. Even though they shared the same DNA, the twins could not have been more different. Seraphina was polished, her skin glowing from expensive facials, her hair a cascade of perfectly highlighted waves. She wore a cream-colored cashmere coat that probably cost 3 months of Elara's rent. Elara, by contrast, had her hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes from pulling double shifts, and hands chapped from scrubbing tables. "I don't have long," Seraphina said, sliding into the booth without removing her sunglasses. She didn't order. She never ordered when she came here. It was beneath her. Elara didn't sit. She held the coffee pot like a shield. "Hello to you, too, Seraphina. Mom said you were coming by." "I'm here to drop this off." Seraphina slid a heavy cream-colored envelope across the sticky table. It was embossed with gold leaf. The wedding of Seraphina Hale and Barrett Langford. Elara stared at it. "I thought you said it was close friends and family only, and that the venue had a cap." "It does," Seraphina said, checking her reflection in the back of a spoon. "But Mom insisted." "Look, Elara, let's be real. Barrett's family owns Langford Logistics. They are old money. The guest list includes senators, CEOs, and people who own islands. It's not your crowd." "I'm your sister," Elara said, her voice flat. "Exactly, which is why I'm inviting you. But there are conditions." Seraphina finally took off her glasses. Her eyes scanned Elara's uniform with distaste. "Do not wear anything from a mall. Do not talk about your job. And for the love of God, do not bring a date unless he fits the aesthetic. Barrett's best man is a hedge fund manager. If you bring one of your soul bartender friends, just don't come." "I don't have a boyfriend, Seraphina." "Good, keep it that way. Just sit at the back table near the kitchen doors and try to blend in with the upholstery. I don't want any drama." Seraphina stood up, smoothing her coat. "This is my day, Elara. The day I finally get everything I deserve. Don't ruin it with your poverty." Seraphina turned and walked out. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, completely at odds with the hollow feeling in Elara's chest. Elara pocketed the invitation. She wasn't going to go. Why would she? To be a prop, to be the ugly duckling comparison that made Seraphina shine brighter. But rent was due, and her second job started soon. Elara clocked out of the diner and took the subway downtown to the meatpacking district. Her second job was vastly different from the diner. It was at the Obsidian, an ultra-exclusive members-only lounge hidden behind an unmarked steel door. Here she wasn't just a server. She was invisible furniture for the city's most dangerous elite. The manager, a nervous man named Arthur, caught her at the entrance. "Elara, you're on the VIP mezzanine tonight, Section A." Elara froze. "Section A? Arthur, that's heavy hitters only. Usually Marco takes that." "Marco is sick," Arthur hissed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Listen to me. The group coming in tonight, they are serious people. You speak only when spoken to. You pour with the right hand. You do not make eye contact unless necessary. Understand?" "Who are they?" "Ronan Hale." The name sent a chill through the staff room. Even Elara, who tried to ignore the gossip, knew the name. Ronan Hale wasn't just a businessman. He was an institution. He owned half the shipping ports on the East Coast, several construction firms, and, if the rumors were true, the police commissioner's loyalty. He was the kind of man Barrett Langford pretended to be. Elara nodded, smoothing her black skirt. "I got it." Later, the atmosphere in the mezzanine was suffocating. The air smelled of Cuban cigars and agonizingly expensive scotch. Ronan Hale sat at the center of a semicircular leather booth. He was younger than Elara expected, perhaps early 30s, with sharp, predatory features and eyes the color of cold steel. He wore a black suit that absorbed the light, tailored so perfectly it looked like a second skin. He didn't speak much. He let the four men around him do the talking. They were discussing Union territories and resolving the noise in New Jersey. Elara moved like a ghost, refilling crystal glasses with premium cognac. "Another bottle," one of the men barked. He was a thick-necked man with a scar running through his eyebrow. "And bring ice." "Mr. Hale drinks it neat," Elara said softly, before she could stop herself. The table went silent. The scarred man glared at her. "Excuse me." Ronan Hale raised a hand, stopping his associate. He looked at Elara for the first time. His gaze was heavy, physical. "She's right, Thorne. I drink it neat. The girl pays attention. That's rare." "I'll fetch the bottle, sir." She retreated to the service bar, her hands shaking. She just wanted this shift to end. As she prepared the tray, she saw a movement in the reflection of the brass espresso machine. A man in a waiter's uniform, someone she didn't recognize, was hovering near the open bottle of premium cognac meant for Hale's table. He slipped a small, clear vial from his sleeve, let 2 drops fall into the amber liquid, and vanished back into the kitchen. Elara's blood ran cold. It happened in seconds. The logical part of her brain screamed, "Walk away. You saw nothing. These people kill witnesses." But the human part of her, the part that hated bullies, the part that hated underhanded tactics, couldn't move her feet toward the exit. She grabbed the tray. She walked back to the table. The scarred man, Thorne, reached for the bottle. "Here you are," Elara said. Her voice trembled slightly. As she went to place the bottle on the table, she made a decision that would end her life or change it forever. She tripped. She lunged forward, her elbow knocking the crystal bottle hard. It flew from the tray and shattered against the edge of the marble table, splashing cognac all over Ronan Hale's immaculate suit. The sound of shattering glass was like a gunshot. Thorne was on his feet instantly. A gun materialized in his hand, pointed directly at Elara's forehead. "You stupid!" Elara gasped, falling to her knees, looking at Ronan. I'm so sorry. I tripped." Ronan didn't move. He looked at the brown liquid soaking into his expensive lapel. He looked at Thorne's gun. Then he looked at Elara. He saw the terror in her eyes. But he saw something else, too. He saw that she wasn't looking at the mess. She was looking at the puddle of cognac on the floor, which was currently fizzing slightly where it touched the leather of the booth seat. "Cognac doesn't fizz." Ronan raised a finger. "Thorne, put it away." "She ruined the suit, boss. She almost took your eye out." "Look at the floor," Ronan said, his voice terrifyingly calm. The men looked. The liquid was bubbling, eating into the finish of the floor. Acid, or a potent neurotoxin reacting with the varnish. The silence returned, heavier than before. Ronan stood up. He wasn't looking at the floor anymore. He was looking at Elara. "You didn't trip, did you?" Elara swallowed hard, her throat dry. I'm clumsy, sir." "You saw something." Ronan stated, walking around the table until he stood over her. He extended a hand. It was large, manicured, and steady. "Get up." Elara took his hand. He pulled her to her feet with effortless strength. "Who was it?" he asked. "A waiter, new guy, dark hair, scar on his chin. He went to the kitchen." Ronan nodded once to Thorne. Thorne and 2 other men disappeared toward the kitchen instantly. Ronan looked at Elara. "You know what you just did?" "I spilled an expensive bottle of cognac." A corner of Ronan's mouth twitched. "You saved my life, and you ruined a suit that cost more than this building. But I think the life is worth slightly more." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. It was black metal with a gold phone number, no name. "I don't like owing debts," Ronan said, "and I owe you a big one. Whatever you want, money, protection, a new job, you call this number, tomorrow." "I don't want your money," Elara said, the adrenaline making her bold. Ronan paused. He studied her face, seemingly intrigued by her refusal. "Everyone wants money or power. What do you want, Elara?" Elara thought about the invitation in her pocket. She thought about Seraphina's sneer. She thought about Barrett Langford and his arrogance. "I need a date," she whispered. Ronan blinked, genuinely surprised. "A date?" "My twin sister is getting married next Saturday. She thinks I'm a failure. She thinks I'm nothing. I need a date who can make the room go silent." Ronan Hale stared at her for a long moment. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. "Saturday," he said. "Be ready at 6 p.m. and Elara, don't worry about the dress. I'll handle it." The next days were a blur of anxiety for Elara. Had she really just invited the most feared man in the city to a wedding? She kept expecting the black metal card to disappear, or for a news report to announce Ronan Hale's arrest. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to her crumbling apartment building in Queens. A woman stepped out. She was severe, wearing a tailored gray suit and holding a tablet. "Miss Elara?" the woman asked. "I am Nora, Mr. Hale's personal stylist. Please come with me." "I have a shift at the diner," Elara stammered. "Your shift has been covered. Your manager has been compensated generously. Please." Elara got in the car. They didn't go to a mall. They went to a penthouse in Manhattan that had been converted into a private showroom. There were no price tags here, only silk, velvet, and diamonds. "Mr. Hale was specific," Nora said, walking through racks of gowns. "He said, you are not to look like a guest. You are to look like a queen." "I don't want to outshine the bride," Elara lied. Nora laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "My dear, with Mr. Hale on your arm, you could wear a trash bag and you would outshine the bride, but we aim for total devastation." They settled on a dress that was scandalous, yet elegant. It was a deep midnight blue, almost black. It was backless with long sleeves and a neckline that plunged just enough to be dangerous. The fabric shimmered like the night sky. When Elara looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. The exhausted waitress was gone. In her place was a woman who looked like she owned the skyline visible through the window. "Now," Nora said, opening a velvet case, "the jewelry." Inside was a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that looked heavy enough to sink a small boat. "These are on loan from the Hale family vault," Nora said, fastening it around Elara's neck. "Do not lose them, or Mr. Hale will be displeased." The wedding arrived with a gray, overcast sky. The wedding was at the Kensington Manor, an estate outside the city. It was the kind of place where the grass was manicured with scissors and the air smelled of old money and exclusion. Elara waited outside her apartment building. A convoy of black SUVs turned the corner. They moved in perfect formation, aggressive and heavy. The middle car stopped. The driver, a mountain of a man, opened the back door. Ronan Hale sat inside. He was wearing a tuxedo, but not a rental. It was bespoke, midnight blue to match her dress, with a black bow tie. He looked devastatingly handsome and utterly lethal. He looked up from his phone as Elara slid in. He stopped scrolling. His eyes swept over her, taking in the dress, the diamonds, and the way she held her head high despite her nervousness. "Adequate," he murmured, though his eyes betrayed approval. "You look nice too," Elara said, trying to stop her hands from shaking. "I know," Ronan replied. He tapped the partition. Drive." As they merged onto the highway, Ronan poured 2 glasses of sparkling water. "Tell me about the targets." "Targets?" "The people we are going to annoy. Give me the dossier." Elara laughed nervously. "It's my sister Seraphina and her groom, Barrett Langford." Ronan's hand froze halfway to his mouth. "Langford?" "Yes. His family owns Langford Logistics." Ronan slowly set the glass down. A dark, predatory glint entered his eyes, sharper than before. "Barrett Langford is marrying your sister." "Yes. Do you know him?" Ronan sat back, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Know him? His father owes me millions. And Barrett has been trying to move cargo through my port without paying the toll." Elara's eyes widened. "Oh no, Ronan, if this is going to cause a gang war, we can turn back." Ronan chuckled. It was a low, rumbling sound. He reached over and took Elara's hand. His grip was warm and firm. "Elara, there won't be a war. Not tonight. Tonight is about diplomacy and debt collection." He squeezed her hand. "You wanted to make a scene. You have no idea what you just walked into. By the end of this night, Barrett Langford will wish he had married a nun in a basement." The car slowed down. They were approaching the gates of the Kensington Manor. Security guards with clipboards were checking cars. "Name?" the guard asked as the window rolled down. The driver didn't speak. He just held up a black badge. The guard's face went pale. He stumbled back, waving his arm frantically. "Open the gate! Open it now! VIP entry!" Ronan turned to Elara. "Ready?" "No," she admitted. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember, you are with me. Anyone who looks at you wrong answers to me. Chin up." The car rolled up the long gravel driveway, past the fountains and the peacocks, toward the grand entrance where guests were sipping champagne and judging each other. Seraphina was standing on the steps, posing for photos with Barrett. She looked perfect in her white lace gown. Barrett looked smug, swirling his drink, laughing at something his best man said. The convoy of SUVs stopped right in front of the red carpet. The engines cut, plunging the area into silence. The driver opened the door. Ronan stepped out first. He buttoned his jacket, scanning the crowd with a look of utter boredom. Then he reached a hand back into the car. Elara took it. She stepped out, the midnight blue dress catching the flash of the photographer's cameras. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. It was the sound of people realizing that the predator had just entered the sheep pen. Barrett Langford dropped his glass. Ronan leaned close to Elara's ear. Showtime. The sound of Barrett Langford's champagne glass shattering on the marble steps seemed to echo for an eternity. The golden liquid splattered onto his polished Italian loafers. But he didn't move. He couldn't. He was staring at the man walking up the stairs toward him, a man who, by all accounts, should have been a myth whispered about in boardrooms, not a guest at his wedding. Seraphina, oblivious to the undercurrent of terror radiating from her groom, looked from Barrett to the newcomers. Her eyes narrowed. She recognized Elara instantly, despite the transformation. The midnight blue dress hugged Elara's frame in a way that made Seraphina's own white lace gown look suddenly childish, almost like a costume. But it was the man that confused her. He was devastatingly handsome, exuding a dark magnetic pull that sucked the air out of the courtyard. "Barrett!" Seraphina hissed, nudging him with her elbow. "Who is that?" Barrett swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "That," he whispered, his voice cracking, "is Ronan Hale?" Seraphina's eyes widened. Even she knew the name. Hale was the owner of Hale Global, the company that had just bought the skyline of the financial district. He was billionaire royalty, but with a reputation for ruthlessness that kept him off the society pages and in the shadowy corners of power. By the time Ronan and Elara reached the top of the stairs, a hush had fallen over the entire assembly. The guests parted like the Red Sea, creating a wide path for them. Elara felt her legs trembling, but Ronan's hand on her lower back was a steadying weight. He leaned in slightly. "Breathe," he murmured. "Look at them. They are terrified. Enjoy it." They stopped in front of the bride and groom. "You, Elara," Seraphina said, her voice tight. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You made it. And you brought a guest. I thought I was clear about the +1 policy." "Policies are for employees, Mrs. Langford," Ronan said. His voice was smooth, deep, and carried effortlessly without him having to raise it. "Not for family." Ronan turned his gaze to Barrett. The groom was pale, sweating profusely despite the cool autumn breeze. "Mr. Hale," Barrett stammered, extending a shaking hand. I had no idea you were acquainted with my sister-in-law. It's an honor, truly." Ronan looked at the extended hand. He didn't take it. He just stared at it until Barrett, humiliated, slowly lowered his arm. "Elara is a very special associate of mine," Ronan said, his eyes drilling into Barrett. "When she told me her sister was marrying into the Langford family, I insisted on coming. I wanted to see the man who thinks he's good enough for this bloodline and to check on my investments." Barrett flinched at the word investments. "Right, yes, of course. We should move to the reception, please." Seraphina, sensing she was losing control of her own spotlight, stepped forward. She looked Elara up and down, her gaze lingering on the sapphire necklace. "That's a lovely rental, Elara. I hope you didn't spend your entire month's tips on it. I'd hate for you to starve just to play dress-up." The guests nearby gasped softly. It was a cruel, classless jab. Elara felt the old shame rising, the heat creeping up her neck. But before she could respond, Ronan laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Rental," Ronan repeated, sounding amused. He reached out and brushed a thumb over the sapphires at Elara's throat. "These are from the Hale family vault. They belong to my great-grandmother. They haven't seen the light of day for a while. I only bring them out for women who possess true elegance, something that evidently cannot be bought with a wedding planner." Seraphina's face turned a violent shade of red. She opened her mouth to retort, but Barrett grabbed her arm. "Seraphina, stop!" he hissed. "Do not speak to him like that." "But he's insulting me," Seraphina shrieked, her voice shrill. "He owns the bank that holds the mortgage on this estate," Barrett whispered harshly, loud enough for the front row to hear. Ronan smirked. He offered his arm to Elara. "Shall we? I believe there is an open bar, and I have a thirst." They walked past the stunned couple and into the grand hall. As they moved, Elara felt a strange sensation in her chest. For years, she had been the shadow, the disappointment, the server. But in minutes, Ronan Hale had turned the hierarchy upside down. She looked up at him. His profile was hard, unyielding, like a statue. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." Ronan glanced down, his eyes softening just a fraction. "I know enough. I know you saved my life when you could have walked away, and I know a bully when I see one. Tonight, Elara, we burn their kingdom down." The reception hall was a masterpiece of excess. Chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling, and the tables were laden with white roses and imported crystals. A live orchestra played softly in the corner. Elara followed Ronan into the room, her head held high. However, as they approached the seating chart, her heart sank. Seraphina had been thorough. Table 1, bride, groom, parents. Table 2, senators, VIPs. Table back, Elara Hale and guest. The table was in the far back corner, right next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen. It was the table usually reserved for distant cousins and people the bride hoped wouldn't show up. It was dark, noisy, and humiliating. Elara stopped. "The table in the back," she said quietly. "I told you she wants me invisible." Ronan looked at the chart, then at the table in the corner. He shook his head. "Unacceptable." He scanned the room. His eyes landed on table 1, the head table. It was set for people: Seraphina, Barrett, their parents, the best man, and the maid of honor. There were 2 empty seats, reserved for Barrett's grandparents, who Elara knew were too ill to travel, but for whom places had been set out of respect. "Come with me," Ronan said. He walked straight through the center of the room, ignoring the assigned path. He walked up to the head table. The parents, Elara's mother, Miriam, and Barrett's father, Charles, were already seated, sipping wine. "Elara!" Miriam gasped. "What are you doing? Your table is in the back." "Plans have changed, Miriam," Ronan said smoothly. He pulled out the chair meant for Barrett's grandfather. "Sit, Elara." "You can't sit there," Miriam hissed. "That's for Barrett's grandfather." "He isn't here," Ronan replied, sitting down in the chair next to Elara, "and I refuse to let the most beautiful woman in the room sit next to the kitchen exhaust, unless you'd like to escort me out yourself, Mrs. Hale." Miriam closed her mouth. She looked at Charles Langford for support, but the older man was staring at Ronan with a mixture of fear and awe. "Mr. Hale," Charles said, nodding respectfully. "Please join us. It's an honor." "Charles," Ronan acknowledged him with a curt nod. "I see you're still enjoying the dividends from the waterfront project. You're welcome." The dynamic of the table shifted instantly. When Seraphina and Barrett arrived for their grand entrance, they froze. Their seats were in the center, but the power center of the table had shifted to the right end where Ronan sat relaxed, one arm draped over the back of Elara's chair. Seraphina stormed over. "What are you doing? Get up! This is my wedding." "And a lovely one it is," Ronan said, picking up a breadstick and examining it. "Though the layout left something to be desired, I fixed it for you." "Sit down, Seraphina. Your soup is getting cold." Barrett grabbed Seraphina's hand before she could scream. "Honey, please just sit. It's fine. It's better this way." "Better," she seethed. "My twin sister, the waitress, is sitting in Grandpa's seat." "She is sitting with Ronan Hale," Barrett whispered. "Do you want to be the reason Langford Logistics goes bankrupt?" "Sit down." Seraphina sat, but her eyes were murderous. Dinner was an exercise in tension. The guests at the nearby tables weren't looking at the bride and groom. They were watching Ronan Hale. Every time he laughed at something Elara said, a ripple went through the room. Every time he poured her water, women at other tables sighed with jealousy. Elara, initially terrified, began to relax. She realized that Ronan was acting as a shield. No one could touch her while she was in his orbit. "So, Elara," her mother, Miriam, said, trying to bridge the awkward gap while cutting her steak, "you never mentioned you were dating someone of Mr. Hale's stature. I thought you were still working double shifts at that diner." "She works at the Obsidian," Ronan interjected smoothly. "It's an exclusive club, very high-end. That's where we met. She manages the VIP sector. She has a gift for handling difficult people." He glanced pointedly at Seraphina. "Oh," Miriam said, taking a sip of wine. "Well, that's better." Midway through the main course, the speeches began. The best man, a hedge fund manager named Blaine, who was already drunk, gave a rambling speech about Barrett's college days. Then the maid of honor, one of Seraphina's sorority sisters, gave a speech about how Seraphina was the princess who finally found her prince. Then Seraphina stood up. She tapped her glass with a silver fork. The room went silent. "Thank you all for coming," Seraphina said, her voice projecting perfectly. She looked radiant, but her eyes were cold. "This day has been a dream come true. I'm so happy to share it with my friends, my family, and my husband." She paused, turning her gaze toward the end of the table. "I'm even happy my sister Elara could be here." Seraphina continued, her tone dripping with fake sweetness. "I know it was a stretch for her. We all know Elara has always been the free spirit of the family. While I was finishing my MBA, she was finding herself. I'm just so glad she could take a night off from serving burgers to see what real success looks like. Let's raise a glass to Elara. May she one day find a direction." A few people chuckled nervously. It was a humiliation tactic designed to remind everyone that Elara was less than. Elara gripped her napkin, her knuckles white. She looked down at her plate, wishing the floor would open up. The chair beside her scraped against the floor. Ronan Hale stood up. He didn't tap a glass. He didn't ask for permission. He simply stood, and the sheer force of his presence silenced the room instantly. He took the microphone from Seraphina's hand. She was too stunned to resist. "A lovely toast," Ronan said, his voice dark and smooth, but incomplete. He walked around the table until he stood behind Elara's chair. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You speak of success, Seraphina," Ronan addressed the bride. "But success is easily feigned when it is paid for by daddy's money and a husband's inheritance." Gasps rippled through the room. Barrett looked like he was about to faint. "Real success," Ronan continued, "is survival. It is grace under pressure. It is loyalty." He looked out at the crowd of wealthy elites. "There was an incident at my club, a situation that could have resulted in my death. Most people would have run. Most men in this room," he cast a withering glance at Barrett, "would have hidden. But Elara didn't run. She acted. She saved my life. She possesses a courage that none of you can buy, no matter how much you spend on your tuxedos." Ronan looked down at Elara, and for the first time that night, his smile was genuine and warm. "Seraphina, you asked us to toast to Elara finding a direction. I'm happy to report she has found one." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He tossed it onto the table in front of Barrett. "Barrett, you know what that is?" Ronan asked. Barrett looked at the document. His hands shook. It's the deed to the Kensington Manor." "Correct," Ronan said. "I bought the venue. Technically, this wedding is taking place in my house." The room erupted in whispers. "And," Ronan continued, raising his voice slightly to cut through the noise, "I am gifting the deed to Elara." He looked at Elara. "Happy early birthday. You now own the venue where your sister is getting married, which means technically you are the host." Ronan turned back to a full, trembling Seraphina. "So Seraphina, be nice to your sister, or she might decide to kick you out." The silence in the grand hall was absolute. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals or bomb threats, not wedding receptions. Pairs of eyes darted between the deeds sitting on the table, Ronan Hale's unreadable expression, and Seraphina's face, which was crumbling into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. You bought the manor," Seraphina whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's impossible. It's been in the Kensington family for generations." "Money is a powerful solvent," Ronan replied. "It dissolves tradition quite effectively. The Kensingtons needed liquidity. I needed a gift. The math was simple." Seraphina looked at Elara. For the first time in their lives, Seraphina wasn't looking down at her twin. She was looking up. The power dynamic had shifted so violently that the room seemed to tilt. "You," Seraphina pleaded, her voice trembling, "tell him this is a joke. You can't own my wedding venue. You're a waitress." Elara looked at the deed. It was real. The legal stamps, the signatures, it was all there. She looked at her sister. She remembered the years of hand-me-downs, the constant criticism, the way Seraphina had uninvited her from the bachelorette party because she didn't fit the vibe. Elara picked up the deed. "I may be a waitress, Seraphina, but tonight I'm the landlady, and I think you should sit down before you ruin your makeup." A few guests gasped. Someone in the back snickered. Seraphina fell into her chair, defeated. Barrett poured himself a drink with shaking hands, ignoring his bride completely. "Now," Ronan said, checking his luxury watch, "I believe the schedule calls for the first dance." The band leader, confused and terrified, looked at Barrett. Sir, should we play the song?" "Play it," Barrett snapped. downing his whiskey. The band struck up the opening chords of a generic slow ballad. Seraphina stood up, wiping tears from her eyes, expecting Barrett to lead her to the floor. But Barrett didn't move. He was staring into his empty glass. "Barrett," Seraphina hissed, "the dance." "I can't," Barrett muttered. "My legs feel like jelly. Give me a minute." "We don't have a minute. Everyone is watching." Ronan stood up. He buttoned his tuxedo jacket with a sharp, crisp movement. He extended a hand toward Elara. "It seems the groom is indisposed," Ronan said, his voice carrying to the band. "And it is bad luck to leave a dance floor empty. Elara." Elara hesitated. "Ronan, this is the bride's moment." "The bride is busy arguing with a coward," Ronan said softly, only for her to hear. "Tonight is about you. Take my hand." Elara took it. He led her to the center of the dance floor. The spotlight, originally programmed to follow the white dress, hesitated for a second before swinging over to illuminate the midnight blue gown. Ronan pulled her close. His hand on her waist was possessive, warm, and firm. As they began to move, Elara realized he was an exceptional dancer. He moved with a fluidity that betrayed his size, guiding her effortlessly through the steps. "Everyone is staring," Elara whispered, resting her hand on his shoulder. "Let them," Ronan replied, his eyes locked on hers. "They are wondering how a woman like you has been hiding in plain sight for so long." "You're doing this to mess with Barrett," she said. "Partly," he admitted, "but mostly I'm doing this because you look extraordinary, and I wanted to hold you." Elara's breath hitched. "You don't have to pretend, Ronan. We aren't negotiating a deal right now." Ronan stopped, spinning her. He held her still for a beat, ignoring the music. "Elara, I don't pretend. In my world, pretending gets you killed. When I say you look extraordinary, it is a statement of fact." He spun her out and pulled her back in, her back pressing against his chest for a moment before they resumed the waltz. "Barrett is in trouble, isn't he?" Elara asked, glancing over Ronan's shoulder at the head table. "Deep trouble," Ronan confirmed. "He borrowed money from the wrong people before he borrowed from me. He's been using the Langford shipping containers to move things he shouldn't, drugs, worse, counterfeit parts, dangerous ones, airplane components, medical devices, junk that kills people. He's trying to clear his debt by marrying Seraphina. Her dowry and the trust fund she unlocks at marriage is the only thing keeping his kneecaps intact." Elara stopped dancing. She pulled back, looking at Ronan with wide eyes. "He's using her. He doesn't love her." "He might love her in his own way," Ronan shrugged, "but he loves his life more. He needs her money to pay off a creditor named Victor Slade. If he doesn't, Slade will come for him." "We have to tell her," Elara said, looking at her sister. Seraphina was sitting alone at the table, furiously texting on her phone, looking miserable. "We will," Ronan said, "but not yet. The night is young, and I haven't finished my dance." At that moment, the song ended. The room erupted in applause, louder and more genuine than the polite clapping for the speeches. They were applauding the chemistry, the power, and the sheer spectacle of the couple in blue and black. As they walked off the floor, Seraphina intercepted them. She had composed herself, her face a mask of cold fury. "That was quite a show." Seraphina spat. "You steal my venue. You steal my spotlight. What's next, Elara? Are you going to steal my husband?" Elara looked at Barrett, who was sweating through his expensive shirt. "Trust me, Seraphina," Elara said quietly. "You can keep him. In fact, you might want to ask him why he's sweating so much." Seraphina frowned, looking back at Barrett. "What are you talking about?" Before Elara could answer, a waiter approached Ronan. It wasn't one of the regular staff. He wore an earpiece and moved with military precision. It was one of Ronan's security detail. "Sir," the guard whispered, "we have a situation at the north gate." Ronan's expression shifted instantly from amused guest to cold warlord. Slade. Yes, sir. 2 cars. They are demanding entry. They say Mr. Langford invited them. Ronan nodded. Let them in. Escort them to the library. Do not bring them to the ballroom. Understood. Ronan turned to Elara. Stay here. Stay with your mother. Where are you going? Elara asked, grabbing his arm. To handle the wedding crashers, Ronan said. Barrett's debt has just arrived to collect. Ronan walked over to the head table. He didn't ask Barrett to join him. He simply grabbed the groom by the back of his tuxedo collar and hauled him out of his chair. We need to talk, Ronan growled. Now, Barrett yelped. Hey, get your hands off me. I'm the groom. You're a liability, Ronan said, dragging him toward the side exit. Move. Seraphina stood up, screaming. Where are you taking him? Ronan didn't look back. Elara, handle her. Elara found herself standing in front of a hysterical Seraphina. Seraphina, sit down. Ronan is saving him. Saving him from what? Seraphina shrieked. From you and your psycho boyfriend. From himself, Elara snapped. Barrett is in trouble, Seraphina. Real trouble. Not my dress doesn't fit trouble. Men with guns trouble. Seraphina froze. What? Come with me, Elara said.